It's like a toxic soup. It's when the water permeates down through the ground into the waste. The wastes are breaking down and it produces a cocktail of harmful chemicals. And they then trickle through or run through the groundwater and into the surface water, into the river. And at 2014, the official report estimated that Mobuoy was producing an Olympic-sized swimming pool of leachate and releasing it every week.
Jeez.
The most significant one is the Mobuoy illegal dump, one of the biggest illegal landfills in Europe.
When you say illegal, like, was it, there's no planning at all? It was just people just dumping there?
Yep.
Nobody knew about it?
Well, it wasn't people. It was organised. No, people did know about it, and this is the problem. What you had is two businesses operating there, and very often the government hide behind the fact that they didn't discover this because there were two legitimate businesses there, but there actually weren't two legitimate businesses there. You had a quarry firm that was quarrying, but they didn't have planning permissions for the quarries the big holes that they were digging. And you had a waste contractor that was a recycling plant that was breaching every regulation and didn't have planning permission for a lot that it was doing. So I would argue that they weren't legitimate companies. But what they were doing is, one was digging massive holes in the ground and making a lot of money out of the sand and gravel that they were quarrying without any permissions or without any environmental assessments. And then at the cover of night, recycling that was being brought in from a number of councils that were supposed to be recycled was being shredded along with other waste, builders' wastes, some quite dangerous wastes, and then being buried in the ground close by the River Faughan. Many people thought it was a legitimate business because it was so much in the open that they assumed that it was properly regulated. We had our concerns from the Faughan Anglers, and we actually raised those concerns first formally in 2008 and again in 2009, and our letters disappeared. There's no record of the government having actually received those letters. So it's been very much an ongoing saga, but what we're talking about here is 1.6 million tonnes of waste dumped illegally in an area that covers around 64 football pitches.
But see, when you say like illegal, no planning whatsoever, they just like opened a dumping site or a recycling centre. Was there no planning for the recycling at all? Because usually the council, I assume, you can't open anything without planning.
There was historically there was a recycling centre there, but
that would have been like accepted, approved by the.
That would have been approved. It would have been by central government at the time. We had a different planning system, so the councils didn't take planning decisions back then. And you also had an old historic quarry that was approved around 1973, but what you had is these developments extended way beyond what they had permissions for, massively, without any permissions, without any environmental assessments required under European law at the time. And a blind eye was turned to them. They were never enforced against. They were allowed to continue for a period of over 10 years. And in fact, one of our complaints to the ombudsman at the time found serious failures of regulation of the planning authority at the time to carry out proper environmental assessments and to address the seriousness of the issue. So this is not just my view as such. There's many official documents and investigations that support what we were arguing or calling for to be stopped at the time.
Yeah, and then the knock-on effect of the dumping in the land, then what's the trickle effect?
I don't know if I would call it a trickle effect, because a report that we were aware of that was written, for instance, it was a PSNI report that was released recently under Freedom of Information. It was written around 2014. It was estimating that there was so much waste dumped here illegally that it was producing what's known as leachate. So trickle's maybe the wrong word, but yeah. I mean, this is the seriousness of the issue we're facing here. Bear in mind that some of the waste is dumped to within 5 metres of the river, and it's dumped on what's known as an alluvial plain, sand and gravel. The groundwater flows freely through it towards the river. And on that basis, and in fact, at one time a flood burst into the dump, ran through it, and then ran back out again when the water levels dropped. So all of that has to give serious concern for, as the minister at the time described it, a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's obviously unhealthy for the river. No life can really thrive in the ecosystem.
Of course. Now, there's been arguments that the river has there's no evidence that the river is being very badly affected, but there is evidence that certain dangerous chemicals are reaching the river at levels above water quality standards. But the argument then that government uses, but once it reaches the river, it's fine because that's being diluted to an extent that it's not harmful anymore. But there are serious concerns that we might have been lucky so far, but if it's building up reservoirs of these toxic soups, this leachate in here, who knows what preferential pathway might be created in the future where you could have a burst into the river. The director of the Lochs Agency at the time said on BBC, actually, he said, my worst nightmare is that I get a phone call one morning and the river's dead.
Yeah, yeah.
But it also, bear in mind, this is the 60% of Derry's water supply is taken from this river downstream of this illegal dump.
So that's all connected?
Well, it is in the sense that if you have a major disaster of pollution above where they abstract the water from,
and is that currently where the water's extracted? Is that above or below?
It's below the dump.
Okay,
it's 2 kilometres downstream.
The water's okay. So the mains for a lot of Derry's been taken from that river where the you call the soup is leaking into.
Yeah, over 60% of Derry's water supply comes from the River Faughan.
Because the cost of doing that is significantly. I mean, it's probably zero. A lot less than bringing it to recycle centres or stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Well, two people. There's also what's known as a landfill tax. 2 people have been prosecuted for Mobuoy and went to jail for it quite recently. One of them's out. Maybe the other one might be getting out very soon. But they estimate that the courts had for one of those people in terms of the landfill tax they avoided was around £30 million. So that essentially was a potential gain of £30 million from avoiding the proper regulatory requirements of getting rid of that waste.